everybody. It's Allie with another episode of Storytellers. And I have a guest here today. Her story and what she's going to share is one of the reasons why I started this podcast. I wanted anybody, it didn't matter how many followers they had, it didn't matter who they were, to come and tell their stories here because everybody has a story. And this one is so impactful and so important of bringing awareness to heart disease. And her story goes right into that. And so I'm really excited to have on here a survivor, a bulldog in business, and just an overall incredible woman, Naz Saleem. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome, Allie. Thank you for having me and, of course, bringing awareness to heart disease.
Of course. And like I said, this is why I started this. I come from a news background and I worked for news outlets, and I wanted something with no agenda, with no headlines, with just pure human stories. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Your story of survival and how that's impacting and educating other women now, and you're using that to live a meaningful life. So why don't you just start from the beginning, age 25, when you were diagnosed with cancer?
Sure. Let's see. Prior to that, I was a young professional, working really hard, running 3 miles a day. I mean, I was in good shape, having fun on the road, traveling as a consultant. And one day, in the morning, I woke up and I felt a little lump on the side of my neck. And I was like, well, that's a little odd. So I showed my mom, who's a physician, and she's like, have you been sick? And I said, no, not particularly. So she said, well, let's just wait a week. Waited a week and that lump got bigger.
Mm.
And so we got it biopsied and it turned out to be Hodgkin's disease. And that was a real gut punch at 25 years old to hear you've got cancer. And it's a little bit hard to process, like, really? At 25? But
Mm-hmm.
apparently the type of cancer that I had is definitely, I had the markers, a young 25-year-old, it happened. So got treated and thankfully cancer melted away and I was cancer-free very quickly.
Yeah. And so, I think that first of all, just bringing awareness to the fact of checking yourself, knowing your body. There's a lot here in that story, really knowing your body. I um, have had friends, I myself have found lumps and things that you just have to go get checked out and not sit on. And um, listening to your body is a big thing here. And
Yes.
so it was several years later that you were pregnant and you started to have some heart problems.
Yeah. So fast forward the clock, got married 5 years into getting married. My husband and I had our first child. So the next morning after he was born, I started having a racing heart.
Mm.
And that just felt weird. I didn't feel right.
Right.
So I called the nurse in, I'm in the labor and delivery space and, it's quiet. The nurse comes in and she's like, well, it is a little fast, but I think you just had a baby. So give it a little bit. You could be a little anemic, but let's see how it goes. And just as a funny aside, because it's storytellers, my
Yeah.
husband, for those who've had kids and have been in a labor delivery room will recognize there's usually a little couch or something where somebody, your family's sleeping. So my husband, I thought, was sleeping through this whole thing. After the nurse leaves, he says, your heart's racing because you're looking at my bum again. I was
Oh,
like, no, I guarantee I
got
just
it.
had a baby. I'm not, you have nothing to do with this process right now. So,
Glad you're getting a nice rest.
yeah, you're not involved in this one. Love you, but no, that's not the heart racing. So anyway, I persisted and I said, hey, as the day went on, I was like, really not feeling well here. I think somebody needs to check something out. So they ran a number of tests and it turned out that my aortic valve had sprung a leak given the damage from the radiation treatment,
Mhm.
but also all of the pressure of pregnancy, because you have a lot of fluid on your body when you're pregnant. And then you go through labor. It was a very long labor. So the labor and delivery. And, my son was a week late. So you add all of that together. And in layman's terms, it was kind of a tipping point for my heart. And
Started.
that aortic valve didn't do so well. So they figured that out and they said, look, we think we can treat you outpatient. So we're going to send you home. So we went home with this newborn, and every night that week, I started having this impending sense of doom.
Mm.
Like really severe anxiety would set in the evening. And Allie, I'm not really an anxious person by nature. I'm generally pretty happy-go-lucky.
Yeah.
Um, but I just knew this didn't feel right. Something was really bothering me. And I would tell my family, I would call my mom. And if anybody loves me, it's my mother.
Yep.
And also, again, a physician. And she's like, well, you're probably afraid of the baby. It's really nerve-wracking to have a little baby at home. And I
Right.
said, it's not him. I'm not nervous about him. I've cut his nails. That's not it. But thankfully, by almost a week later, they got it. I was very persistent, and I went back to the hospital a week later, assuming I would get some medication. Again, they said that they would treat me medically and outpatient. But when I got there, they put the little pulse oximeter on my finger and had me walk around just the floor, and my heart rate walking shot up to 150.
Mm.
And that's like when I'm running, you know.
Right.
So that was a really dangerous sign. So they ran a few additional tests and they determined that that leak had gotten really bad and they could not send me home.
Wow.
And that was really hard. I had a 1 week old home at the time, and we decided, I talked to my sister, who's also a physician, and I told her what was going on. And she called my husband because I said I probably wouldn't be able to talk to him about it because I knew how emotional I would get. It was very scary.
Yeah.
So everybody dropped everything, right? I ended up in the ICU, and all these doctors started coming in and they were explaining to me there's a lot to take in. Well, you got your pregnancy fog, first of all, but then
Right.
you add to it the heart problems, you got a little baby at home and all this risk. So we started having conversations about, all right, if you need to have your aortic valve replaced, so you're going to have open heart surgery, you can either do mechanical valve or a tissue valve. If you do a mechanical valve, you will need to take blood thinners for the rest of your life, and you will have a 1% cumulative increase in dying from a bleed out related incident in your life. I was only 31. And they also said you won't be able to have children at the time, at least. I don't know if there's advancements now, but at that time, that would have severely limited, if not cut off completely, the ability to have a child. So again, a lot to take in,
Yeah.
and
And all at
decided,
once.
yeah, we decided to go with the tissue valve. I had open heart surgery a month after he was born. I did well and recovered and back to work 6 weeks later.
Wow. And I mean, clearly still the emotions are there, the
Oh,
fear
yeah.
that you can go right back to that time. I'm sure it never really goes away.
It doesn't, it never went away for me for two primary reasons. One, after having giving birth, 1 week later, to then think about and start to plan, would I make it out?
Hmm.
Like I had to have conversations with my husband. I remember distinctly my father and my mom were with us talking through this. And I was talking with my husband about, well, if I don't make it, what are going to be the plans to take care of my son? And my dad got very upset, understandably. His daughter is saying, I might not make it. And my mom stopped him, right? Because he was saying, don't think like that. Don't talk like that. And my mom said, she has to. She's a mom now. That's her job. She's got to make sure that that little guy is cared for. So for that reason, it's always been with me. But as you fast forward over the story, there have been 3 open heart surgeries, and every time I've had to plan as though I don't make it out. And that is, in one respect, very difficult to do, but in another respect, in incredible in the sense that it helps you appreciate every single day.
Mhm.
And that's something it's hard, but I'm grateful for. I don't take anything for granted, not a breath.
Mhm. Yeah, and at one point, I think I saw that your doctor had even said to you, um, "Don't waste this. Like, we have worked hard for you, and you've worked hard for you."
Yeah, that was a great moment for me. Um, I guess I'll set up a little bit of context around it. After that first open heart surgery, that fall I ended up going to a leadership conference, and I was truly inspired by the CEO of a non-for-profit, and I was blown away by how she approached it. So I talked to her that evening for hours, and I asked her all about her role as a CEO. What was it like? What did she love? And it was like light bulbs went off over my head. I said, I would
Yeah.
love to do that one day. And so I asked her, I said, look, I've spent all these years in technology. If I wanted to one day be a CEO, what would you encourage me to do? And she said, go get your MBA and go start working in the business. So off I went. I applied that fall, 6 to 8 months after having open heart surgery. I applied to do my MBA. And I did that basically full time. I did an MBA in 18 months while also working full time.
Oh,
Again, after having had open heart surgery the year before.
yeah.
And I then worked really hard over my career with this sort of North Star that wouldn't it be cool one day to run a business? And you fast forward, I had a number of, the radiation kept taking its toll on my heart. And whenever something would come up, we would deal with it and we would knock it down and we'd get past it. Well, after my second open heart surgery, which was incredibly complicated, it ended up being, I think, like 9+ hours. I think I coded on the table or something like that. I mean, it was really terrifying for the family. I was out, so I don't know what was going on, but the recovery took a long time. So
Mhm.
while I was in the hospital, the doctors would always come and visit me every day. And my surgeon, who I have a tremendous respect for, he came in and I said, look, my family really wants me to slow down. They don't want me to pursue the goals that I had. And I kind of need your advice. You've been in here. You know how complicated it is. You know what I'm dealing with and what you've been trying to fix. Should I slow down? Should I not go for these longer term career aspirations? And yeah, and that's when he said, if you don't pursue your goals, we are all wasting our time. So you need to go live, and really thrive. Don't hold yourself back because of this. And
Yep.
that was an enormous gift, an enormous gift.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes too, your family, they're trying to do this to protect you and
Mhm.
helps in it. And, letting you live sometimes and work and be passionate about something and give yourself a will to be doing things is what
Absolutely.
you're doing.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting when I applied for the Go Red program, I really tried to be introspective of what did I want people to take away from my story.
Yeah.
And going in, it was really 3 things. It was about being aware of your body, because over this 20-year journey, that awareness was really important for me to be able to recognize when I was having an issue. The second is advocacy. And that advocacy has happened again throughout the 20 years. But the third was aspiration, because I don't want people to feel like heart disease means stop everything. It doesn't. You may absolutely have to make some modifications in your life, but I've lived a very, oh, I'm saying it like I'm done. I have so
I'm
far,
listening.
I am exactly right. I am living, honestly, my best life, and I could not be more thankful every single day for my support system, work, everything, all the challenges. But I never let it stop me, I pivoted, I ducked and weaved, but I've kept learning and growing and taking care of myself. And I would want everybody to not be afraid to recognize their issues and tackle them and move it. You could do it.
Yeah. Well, and similarly, your story continued. You were put on the heart transplant list
Yep.
and you pretty much you worked your way off of it. You ate well. What did you do? How did you do it?
So a little bit of context again. The After my second open heart surgery, just 2 years later, unfortunately, I started having challenges again. So they put some stents in to address the issues, but the radiation kept
Hmm.
unfortunately creating scar tissue. So 6 months after they had done some stents, the passages essentially narrowed in my heart again. And they said, look, the interventions have gotten, again, layman's terms, the interventions have been coming more and more frequently. And we've had to do now, we will have to have done 3 open heart surgeries. We need a backup plan because either you're not, there's a chance you may not make it out. Without additional, support, like a special device that would have to pump for me. So that's one issue. But even if you make it out, we can't keep doing open heart surgery, right? There's
Yeah.
just a lot of complexity in there.
Yeah.
So they needed a backup plan. So going into the third one, they put me on the transplant list and they did the full workup, which again, in one respect is very scary to be on a transplant list. But in the other sense, it gave me a lot of hope, Allie, because I felt there was a plan B.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna do everything I can to stay healthy. So made it through the third surgery, and they followed me very closely, like they do all transplant patients, and had a few bumps in the road, a few issues that made the doctors a little bit nervous. But after 5 years of really continuing to work out about 4 to 5 times a week, continuing to eat healthy, get a reasonable night's sleep, all the things that everybody tells us to do, right? I just followed that as much as possible because, Ellie, I wanted to be the best possible candidate
Yes.
if I needed it. Because I cannot control what happens in my heart. In my circumstance, other people have different circumstances with heart disease. In my circumstance, radiation is going to keep on cooking my heart like a hot dog in a microwave. I mean, it's going to keep going. And I can't control that, but I'll be damned if I don't control what I can. And
Hmm.
that's what I focused on. And with a truly phenomenal healthcare team, I was able to stay really healthy. And they said, look, you're doing great. We're going to take you off the list. We're going to keep watching you. We're going to take you off the list. So that's how I guess I got off the list, is I followed their advice.
Yeah, you took their advice. And so today, like,
Yes.
where does that put you? How you are thriving?
I continue to thrive. Um, Having, great experience with my family. I've survived to have my 25th wedding anniversary. My son turns 21 in a couple of months and is in college. So I've been alive long enough to see that. Um, and I hope that I can live longer to see more. But I feel like at least the fact that I've lived this long, I've given him a strong foundation. Sorry. And he knows what it takes to see a challenge and to get over it and how to work hard, you know, and care for others. So fingers crossed I stay healthy and I'll do continue to do everything in my control.
Yeah.
And that's what I would encourage people to take away is we have so much in our control, you
Mhm.
know, and heart disease affects so many people. In all honesty, I didn't recognize how many people heart disease affects until I became part of the program. Yes, my dad had a heart attack when I was a teenager, and yes, I've seen things like that, but when I became part of the program for Go Red, and I learned 45% of women have some form of cardiovascular disease, that number is staggering, just staggering. And it's interesting because as I mentioned to you, Allie, I had in my mind three things that I wanted women and all of those who love them to take away from my story. But the thing that has surprised me is how many women have come up to me afterwards and said, I had a stroke when I was 24 years old, and outside of my family, I haven't talked to anybody about it.
Yeah.
And I think, and look, I had difficulty too talking about it. All those years in my career, the people who were closest to me and my family and friends obviously knew, and then select coworkers obviously did. But it's something that's very scary to tell people because you're afraid that they're going to think you can't do things, you can't do your job, you can't. So you're worried you're going to look weak. And if it wasn't for family, friends, and coworkers that have told me, look, your story will help people understand that you're strong, but people are strong out there. And if they face cardiovascular disease, they can still do amazing things.
Mhm.
So that's been a surprise to me, and I hope people see that too, that you should talk about it when you're ready. Like, I don't want anybody, obviously, I'm not trying to push people, but if you've gone through cardiovascular disease, helping other people understand it is valuable because when it's quiet, people aren't recognizing that they could do something about it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes, I think that that's true in so many aspects of womanhood in
Yes, yes,
women keep things to their chest. They don't talk about it. They don't um find community about hardships in general that they face because they need to be strong all the time for their business, for their family, for their partners, and the fear is always looking weak. So you have to
absolutely.
battle that. And having this community that you are a part of, I think, and just bringing your voice out, bringing voice to the voiceless, talking about it, showing that it's not just brave to talk about it, but it can be normal,
Yeah,
important.
you said it well.
Oh, so did you. You said everything. But it's true. There's so much. I mean, my friends and I'm 29, and my friends, a lot of them are having kids, and they call me and they're like, "Why does no one talk about this? Like, or are you hearing about this from somebody else?" I mean, there's so many things that no one ever wants to just like admit. And so sharing, even one person sharing their story,
Yeah,
um, helps break those barriers and helps at least one more person share theirs.
for sure. And the thing is that there's so much external pressure, but also internal pressure to be perfect. And I guess I benefit a little bit that I am a self-described um, Instagram dunce. I don't use it. I'm terrible at it. So my son gets a great chuckle every time I look at it and try to do something.
Right.
But the benefit for me, at least, is that I don't get that pressure from what other people are doing, but I feel it inside. So no matter what, you unfortunately can't escape it. I
Yeah.
think the more we can help each other understand that it is totally normal to have challenges
Yeah.
and you need to be able to talk to people and say, hey, I need help. I'm not feeling well,
Yeah.
right? Or whether it's physically or emotionally, because both of them are tied too in many cases. So the
Mhm.
more that we can speak up to each other, and then as friends, as loved ones, hear it really in their voice and help them get the help, right? Don't dismiss it,
Mhm.
because these issues affect too many people. And Allie, it appears in different ways for different people.
Right.
That's the other thing. Nobody guessed that anxiety was connected to heart disease. And I was a very healthy person. So why would the anxiety be my trigger? And over my 20 years, every time I've had situations where I would go for a run and I would break down crying in the middle of a run.
Wow.
That's a little weird.
Mhm.
And that was my body telling me your heart's not doing well. And so understand your baseline. And if
Mhm.
you're feeling off, you gotta look into it, because you want to be around all those
Yeah.
people that you're trying to be super for. You want to be around. So get it checked out.
Yes. I think that that's so important, listening to your body, being in tune with your body. Um, did you, your cancer when you were 25, did that make you really start to think like internally? Was that like the biggest connector that you had really ever had to your body? And then that has stayed with you the rest of your life? Like prior to that, was were you really as connected as you are now? No.
No, no, not at all. So I would say the cancer gave me an awareness of what can happen even
Hmm.
as a young person. And that was important to understand, because when you're 25, you think you're invincible, right? It's like, you're out there doing all sorts of fun stuff. So that was an important learning. But in all honesty, I can't say that I had more awareness of my body as a result. It wasn't until after having my son and learning that this signal that I was having was really indicative of a problem.
Hmm.
And to the extent it's helpful for others, even I, after years of this, there have been moments in my journey where I've started having that anxiety, um, like while I'm working out or something like that, and I will even question it. Believe it
Hmm.
or not, after all of this, I'll say, well, is am I feeling anxious and it's making my heart rate go up? Or is the fact that my heart rate is going up making me feel anxious? So what is happening? It's like a circular loop, and understanding what's the situation. Now, thankfully, my healthcare team has said, look, given your history, you need to hit that button whenever you feel it.
Time. Yeah.
Because I would always feel like, I really feel bad. I'm sorry. I don't want to
Right.
bother you
Be a
all the
burden.
time. Yeah.
Mhm.
And this is somebody who's been on a transplant list saying, I don't really want to bother them. I mean, that's really stupid on my part. But my point is
Right.
that it's hard to do,
Mhm.
and everybody, I think, especially women, are always, well, I shouldn't say always, women are very often
Mhm.
willing to put ourselves second, third, fourth, to be afraid of quote unquote bothering somebody when, hey, something could be wrong. I really need some help.
Yep.
So, yeah, that awareness, even if you have it, you have to have some conviction on using it.
Yeah. And I think that that's so important to just point out for women. 1 in 3 women are um, diagnosed with heart disease or cardiovascular disease of some sort. And like you said, like it's so important. Listen to yourself. Those people that you're putting in front of you are the
Yes.
ones you want to live for. So, you know,
And just building on that stat for a moment, cardiovascular disease is the number one killer of women and the number one killer of new moms. And
wow,
that, I mean,
a heartbreaking statistic.
yeah. So it's real. And that I feel like is a very tenuous time for women.
Hmm.
because again, everybody's thinking of the baby and the mom is thinking of the baby, all of
Yeah.
that. And if, given that it's the number one killer of new moms, I would really ask everybody, if you have a new mom that you love, or anyone in your life that is potentially going to be getting pregnant soon, go get your cardiovascular system checked out in advance. Make sure you're aware of any risk factors you have before you go in and get pregnant. And then if you don't and you still come out and if you don't feel well, say something.
Yep.
Please say something.
Yep. That's the advocating for yourself.
Yes.
And I think that that is such a great idea. I'm so into preventative medicine. Like I will go, I went and got my heart checked like 2 months ago, and my parents made fun of me because they're like, because I will go do like a full body scan anywhere, anytime, full panel of blood work. But I'm like, I want to know. I'm going to
Yes,
live forever. But it's true. And so it's just good to know. Knowledge is power. It is good to know. And it's so important. And I mean, I'm so curious, like your personality, like clearly you've always been this bright ball of sunshine, and it hasn't wavered through these hardships. Would you say that you would be where you are today within your business, how you are as a mom, how you are as a partner, had you not gone through these hardships? Um, like have they helped form you and how you live every day and
for
tell us?
sure. Absolutely. I would say, as hard as it is to say, cancer at 25 was a gift in and of itself.
Mm.
Because after you've had that and you've gone through it, you put things in perspective.
Yeah.
Like, if I had a bad day at work, and I had plenty of bad days at work, right? I had plenty of days like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or, or I was pissed off that somebody said something to me. I was able to put things in perspective and say, well, at least it's not cancer.
Yeah.
Like, eh, what are you gonna do? You can't even like, I
Right.
just, everything was always a perspective. And I think that it's very easy. And again, believe me, I ruminate just like many people do, especially women, but I'm able to pull out of it faster. And
Hmm.
that I think has been incredibly important. I have a very, very resilient spirit. I'm a true optimist at heart. I have reality checks, but I am a true optimist at heart. And I think the other thing is I have a very strong grasp of what is it that I can control and do everything in my power to manage that and to do, put everything into it. And anything I can't control, I can't sweat it. I really can't. So
I
yes,
love good
it's
way to
made
live.
a difference.
Good. Well, Naz, I am just so grateful for your time today and for your vulnerability and bravery, sharing your story. Is there anything else you wanted to say to our listeners today before we sign off?
Well, I think this is great. I really appreciate everything that you're doing in terms of bringing stories to life, especially for people who stink at Instagram, because I'm not really getting it out there any other way. So God bless you for that. Um, and I hope it makes a difference and saves at least one life out there. So please take care of yourselves.